Where focus goes, energy flows, right? And far too many people today are task focused instead of outcome focused. Task focused looks like I'm just checking boxes. My to-do list got shorter today, and then what happens? Tomorrow it's longer again. Outcome focused is more moving closer to a bigger vision. It's not about what we add, it's about what we can subtract and still get the same or better results. And so I've started to eliminate more and more and more things that don't serve me.
Joe, welcome back to the Point of Impact. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me back.
Well, I tell you what, it's a rare treat. I haven't gotten too many return guests. The first time was almost exactly a year ago, March 26, 2025.
Nice.
And they are a construction, Navy Seabee, the Fighting Seabee is one of my favorite John Wayne movies. And came up construction, did real estate, and are a coach. So tell me, as a coach, when you've got somebody coming to you that's got, everything looks great on paper, but there's still something's still holding them back.
Mm-hmm.
What are you finding is the most common reasons?
I would say the most common reason is the universal reason that most of us are held back, right? Which is really just limiting beliefs. What do we believe we're capable of? What do we believe we can do? Do we believe that the seller is going to take our offer? That type of thing. We tend to convince ourselves that we're not going to be successful long in advance of being successful sometimes. And so I would say that's the number one killer of people taking action and getting results in real estate.
I am well acquainted with limiting beliefs, my own and others that I think I take on, or we all kind of take on other people's limiting beliefs as our own. Mm-hmm. And I was just talking about this is those things where people kind of project their fears onto you, and then you accept them.
Yeah.
And I, as a blind and deaf person, I get it all the time.
Sure.
And I know that's more of an obvious case, but we have our big dreams, right? People are like, no, that's too big. You're thinking, too big. You don't want to do 10 times. You do 2 times, right? But all of our audience, the Disruptor Nation, that didn't have the opportunity to listen to the your first episode. I think episode 98 or 89, dyslexia. How about a little recap? Where'd you come up? What's the experience, or Navy history and real estate history, and what brings you up to today?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say for starters, a lot of these, bottlenecks that we've found and targeted are things that I've experienced. All of us have experienced at some point, for the most part. If you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to go out and you're trying to be successful on your own, and you're trying to, it's you against the world, you're going to run into these 5 bottlenecks. And so you ask how they came about. They came about through experience, right? They came about through plenty of failures, plenty of missed opportunities, plenty of heavy duty challenges that we had to overcome in business. And so we designed this list because I find that, I call these the universal bottlenecks for a reason. It doesn't matter what business you're in. Now, I focus a lot on real estate. But I also coach people that own insurance companies, and people that have construction companies, and people that do sales at a high level. And so all these different industries tend to fall back on these same 5 bottlenecks. And the first one is mindset, is limiting belief, is trying to focus on creating a good vision for what you want to accomplish and start to eliminate the bottlenecks of mindset that are keeping you stuck.
Yeah, we already touched on the limiting beliefs, and it's amazing the kind of walls we put up on ourselves. Some of that is not allowing ourselves to broaden the perspective. Mm-hmm. It's like we're looking through the world through the peephole in a hotel door, and just we're allowed to widen the aperture. We can turn into a big bay window and look out at all the possibilities, because we're all capable of so much more. Sometimes we don't know. Sometimes people don't know, haven't even thought of some of these opportunities, some of these abilities that we can pursue. Mm-hmm. So how do you break through? How does one break through this limiting belief bottleneck?
Well, I think it's important to understand that we are wired for safety, right? The first thing that our brain defaults to is to feel safe. And a lot of times, Aaron, a stuck mindset makes us feel like we're safe. It feels like safety. And what it's really is doing is just this, it's fear in disguise. You know, we tell ourselves we're being cautious. We tell ourselves we're being patient. We tell ourselves we're just not ready yet. But really what we're doing is we're stuck in a comfort mode. We're afraid of what happens if we try and we fail. We're afraid of what people might say if we go all in and it doesn't work out in our favor. So instead of challenging our beliefs, we start to rationalize these beliefs to be real. And when we break that word down, we're telling ourselves rational lies about why we can't have what we want, or why we, don't have enough training, or we don't have enough experience, or, we're not confident enough to execute. And these are rational lies. And when we realize that we're telling ourselves lies, it's easier to reprogram. You tell yourself it's not the right time, or no one in my family's ever done this before, or I should just be grateful. And you're a prime example. I mean, you could very easily tell yourself all kinds of lies and be completely non-productive, and here we are doing a podcast. So you're a living example of overcoming these rational lies and changing the narrative that you're telling yourself.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we all have really great excuses if we're creative enough.
Yeah.
And mine are pretty obvious. I could literally just throw up my hand and say I'm too blind and deaf to do blank. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side, I think I heard somebody say, if I'm not getting pushback, I'm not trying hard enough. Mm-hmm. If people aren't trying to convince me not to do something, then I'm probably not trying. I'm not trying to change. I'm not growing.
Yep.
So we can tell rationalize, but then what's the opposite of rationalize?
Well, the beauty of that is we can retrain our brain. And when I talk about retraining our brain, the idea is to start to focus on possibilities instead of problems, right? Like, I'm not here to survive. I'm here to build something bigger. And if I want that outcome, I have to really do a check-in, and I have to ask myself some important questions. And so, your audience could think to some of these questions, like, what do you say you want, but you keep putting off? It's the end of the year. Everyone did their New Year's resolution. I think a lot of people ask themselves the question, what have I always wanted, but I keep putting off? And then we can reverse engineer, well, what are the lies that we're telling ourselves that are keeping us from going after that thing that I really want? And where do these beliefs come from? Where do they stem from? These are all conditioned in us, right? So what can be conditioned can also be reconditioned. That's the beauty of humanity. We're different than animals because we can recondition our thoughts. We can recondition our mindset. And that's the beauty of it. So we really have to reverse engineer what's keeping us stuck to begin with.
Do you have certain questions, prompts, exercises that you use to first recognize some of these limiting beliefs, or to recondition
Absolutely.
your beliefs?
Yeah, you really have to start by peeling back the curtain and asking the specific questions. People can do this on their own. They don't need a coach to ask them these questions, but you have to ask yourself, what's really keeping me stuck? When's the last time an obstacle shut me down and kept me stuck in the place and I didn't try to fix it? What are the opportunities that I know I really want in my heart, but I don't go after those things? And when you're really honest with yourself and you answer these questions honestly, it can really change, the trajectory of where you head next. And so it's important that you answer these tough questions. It's kind of the reason why a lot of people don't have goals written down, right? They don't take the time to ask themselves the questions about what they really, truly want to create in life and in contribution to their community.
Okay, so once we start recognizing the limiting beliefs, and we start reconditioning them, what else holds us back? What else? What are some of these other bottlenecks? Or what do we do once we recognize and we start reconditioning?
Yeah, absolutely. So the second piece, once we have a mindset shift, is we have to create a plan of attack, right? We need to have a strategy. And, I use this analogy a lot, but if you ask somebody about their vacation plans, maybe they're going to Mexico next month, they know everything about that trip. They know how they're getting to the airport. They know what plane they're taking. They know what seat they're on. They obviously know how they're getting to the resort. They know if they have an ocean view or a pool view, or, maybe they have a view of the dumpster because they got a little cheap on the room. But, they have contingency plans. They have their day trips mapped out. They have their dinners mapped out. They know everything, and they have backup plans to support, 7 days in Mexico. But when you ask somebody, Aaron, what do you really want in life? What would make you feel fulfilled? What kind of impact do you want to make? All of a sudden, people get really, really gray on what it is that they want to accomplish. And I think that's tragic in a lot of ways, because it's keeping us stuck as a society, that more people aren't emphasizing their goals rather than, their vacations.
It's true. We don't plan for, say, family time.
Correct.
Or being a father. Like we do for, like you said, vacations, or the marketing, or the project management. We get granular at work, but say the fitness plan, or like I said, building relationships, that kind of stuff. If there's other issues in your life that do need the work, then you got to lay down the plan.
Yeah.
How do we go about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, when you're crystal clear, going along the lines of what you're saying, when you're really clear about where you're going, everything else starts to line up, right? We feel it when we know we're on the right path to doing something that we're passionate about. Your energy shifts, your language shifts, your confidence spikes, your actions start to create different outcomes, and start to create the outcomes that you want, rather than just the day-to-day, like Groundhog Day. And so getting really clear, there's a quote that I like to repeat that I heard from there's a book called The Rockefeller Letters that he wrote to his son. And in there he says, clarity creates conviction, and conviction creates cash flow. And what he's saying there is that the more I'm clear on what I want, the more I do those actions, the more conviction or confidence that I in those actions. Right. So the strategy really has to align with what you want to do, but also what you're passionate about, what you're excited about, what you can envision happening when you get to the end game. We really want to align those things, just like you would be excited to go to Mexico. We should be excited to hit that next milestone.
That's very true. I know I've spoken to now quite a few other guests, like Jason Dries, as a coach, and it talks a lot about alignment. And when your values, which I think are the top level, that are your values, your beliefs, when you're finally in alignment, you get less friction. Right? Things really do start to click, and things just start. It's almost like what is that about luck, preparation, and opportunity?
That's right.
And they just start to align, and you start feeling luckier. But how do we get that alignment? And I know there are certain things that are certainly out of our control. And there are certain things that we've made decisions on in the past that might be out of alignment with our values, but maybe, say, a career path, a relationship. And it's not something that you can just dump overnight because it's out of alignment. How do we start to correct and start to find that alignment?
Well, I think one thing that's really useful is deciding where our focus is. I always say where focus goes, energy flows, right? And far too many people today, Aaron, I find are task focused instead of outcome focused. So task focused looks like I'm just checking boxes. My to-do list got shorter today. And then what happens? Tomorrow it's longer again. Outcome focused is more moving closer to a bigger vision, right? So for example, you had mentioned planning family time or planning time with your wife or your spouse. I try to do date night multiple times a month. That could easily become a task. Hey, did I do date night? Yes, I did. I check it off my box. Or am I doing date night in a way that's creating my bigger vision? That's creating the relationship that I want. Am I actually present? Am I listening? Are we planning? Are we creating a future for our family? Are we talking about the kind of kids we want to raise? That's more of an outcome focused activity versus just check the box and the task is done. So I find that when we're really in alignment with a vision, like you said earlier, all of a sudden the noise starts to disappear, and we start to see more of what Ben Hardy calls the signal, right? Which is really getting us closer and closer to the outcome that we're looking for.
Okay, we have this vision of the future. When we know what values we most align with, but talk about maybe the certain projects, maybe not the tasks, but I know there are seasons to people's lives, to even aspects of their lives. I know you've gone through many phases, from the Navy Seabees to flipping and wholesaling, and I know you've talked about being out of alignment, right? Gaining weight, now just doing the grind of having 5-6 jobs at the same time.
Yeah.
How did you balance what you needed to get done in the short term to arrive where you most wanted to be, or to shed what didn't align?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I used to be proud, as you just said, of running 6 or 7 different companies at the same time, like it was a badge of honor, right? And of course, when you're doing things like that and you're talking about it on social media, everybody's in awe. How does he do it? It's amazing. I wish I had his life. I wish I had that opportunity, or I wish I could, be in charge of all these companies. And the reality of it is that was some of the lowest points of my life. Even though on social media it looked like I was successful and I was happy and I was doing all these things, and the reality was I didn't have any time to myself. I didn't have any time to my family. I didn't generally be present with the people in my life because everything was moving so fast. It was hard to really slow down and take time to pay attention and be present. And so what I've learned over the course of a couple decades in real estate and coaching is that elimination, it's not about what we add, it's about what we can subtract and still get the same or better results. And so I've started to eliminate more and more and more things that don't serve me, that don't align with my values or don't align with the outcomes that I'm looking for. And I found through that process that we create so much more peace and so much more presence and so much more happiness and contentness. It doesn't mean that I'm not excited about chasing new opportunities and solving new problems and building new things, but I'm much more intently focused on which ones I am best doing rather than wasting time trying to chase.
Here's a question I get all the time, but looking back on your career history, is there anything that you think was a waste of time or a waste of effort or energy, or, or was it all, can you attribute all of it to the learning process, to the building, like the phases, like learn, do, delegate?
Yeah.
There's a growth process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've definitely been there. I've owned businesses that I probably had no business being in, and I did some of that for vanity. Some of those businesses made really good money. So sometimes I was chasing the money. But again, what I've learned is that the more I can laser focus in on my unique ability, the things that I'm good at. I'm really good at real estate. I'm really good at negotiating deals. I'm really good at putting people in the right seats on the team. I'm really good at coaching and motivating those people to be successful. So from now, in the last few years and going forward, I really try to only focus on business activities that are in alignment with what I'm already creating. So they say like the deal of a lifetime comes along once a day, so we're always going to get these opportunities. But I think that what I've gotten much better at over the last couple of years is learning to say no when I'm not a good fit, and maybe refer somebody else to sit in that seat and still do the right thing without taking on, the ultimate responsibility.
Yeah, that's an interesting point of view right there, is that you have done many successful ventures, from the construction, the flipping, wholesaling, coaching, and many other. Why did you decide to zero in or put your primary focus, if that is your primary focus, in the coaching?
The coaching is about 50% of my time, and the real estate development itself, running that business, is the other 50. But what I've learned, Aaron, in the last few years is that I really want to coach with people that are going to become my business partners. So it's vertically integrated now, because most of my coaching clients I'm doing business with. I'm either helping them put the money together for a deal, or I'm helping them put the team together to design and build the deal, or I'm helping them try to figure out how to build their own portfolios. But in all those cases, the coaching really is an alignment, because I'm doing what I'm doing already, and I'm just multiplying the effort by helping other people do it as well.
That's one of the things I've found service members, veterans, are really good at. And I think it's because half of a service member's job is teaching their replacements.
Yep.
And of course, the more your teammates, your counterparts the better they can do their job, the better the team functions.
Yep.
And the better you do in your job with better functioning components. So when it comes to business, I know it does integrate really well. The teaching and coaching, plus the partnerships.
Agreed.
Did you learn a lot of that from your military service, or where did that coaching mentality come from?
Yeah, I think that the military really instilled in me the concept of community and kind of who, not how. You're always, I've always found, because I was in construction in the military, you're always thinking about people as far as like, what is their highest and best value, and where can I support them to be better, and kind of leverage their efforts to make this project go smoother or faster. And so I think a lot of that I took into the civilian world, because I'm always looking to kind of build a really good team around me. And that was the same thing I did in the battalions. You know, if I was getting deployed somewhere, I wanted to make sure I took the right team members to get the job done. So, yeah, I definitely think a lot of that carried over. But that doesn't mean that, you know, you need the military to learn how to do that. You know, I think a lot of us can learn how to delegate responsibility effectively and get the results that we're looking for and build good people in the process.
You certainly brought a lot of the experience into the coaching, at least before you began coaching. Did you have to deal with imposter syndrome? Was that still a thing, or? Well,
you know what, Aaron? I feel like I deal with that every day. You know, I think a lot of people would be lying if they didn't say that, especially if you're in growth mode. You know, I mean, I'm doing something new, you know, every quarter. And that's the part that I enjoy. It's trying to take on things that, you know, seem kind of insurmountable or challenging, or they're new. And I think especially in real estate, not that it's not true in a lot of industries, you know, they call that contrarian thinking. And, you know, being a contrarian and doing something different, you know, courage is actually the opposite of conformity. Right? Most people want to conform. They want to do what everybody else is doing. And I think if you have the courage to kind of think outside the box, that's where you see the people that excel the most in life and generally build, you know, not only successful monetary careers, but usually build successful families and successful teams around them.
It's like the Australians call the tall poppy concept.
Mm-hmm.
The tallest poppy gets cut. But it's that fear of sticking out. And you were just talking about our teenagers and how my son, he wants to peacock so much. It's so, consumed by his personal appearance. But then he doesn't want to stand out too much from his peers. Right? We don't want to stick our necks out.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's another fear, right? Standing out of the crowd.
Yeah.
But then there's a limiting belief. So
exactly. Yeah.
How do we counter that?
Well, I think that one, you know, that standing out in the crowd piece, it really boils down to what do you really want, you know? And I know that's such a kind of a basic and boring question. But I hired a coach a few years ago, and you know, I sat down with him. The first thing he asked me at 8 o'clock in the morning, dead in the face, he says, "What do you really want? Why are you here?" And I kind of jokingly was like, you know, I was kind of friends with the guy, and I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm not sure. He goes, "No, we're not leaving today until we figure out what we really want." You know, I think it's a challenge for a lot of people. They don't take the time to answer that basic question. You know, what do you really want? And for me, it has evolved into, I want to do, you know, great real estate projects with great people. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's not, you know, but it took me years to figure that out. You know, I chased all these different opportunities and businesses and partnerships and, you know, things that didn't all pan out. Some did. But at the end of the day, I never really defined what I wanted until that moment. And so I think from a limiting belief perspective, you got to start with that vision. What do you really want to see happen? You know, is it monetary? Is it freedom based? Is it, you know, there's all different types of freedom. It's not just financial freedom, right? We might want geographical freedom. I want to make enough money that I can travel the world and be a nomad for the next 5 years. Or, you know, I want relationship freedom. I want to be able to hang out with the people I want to hang out with and have the guts to say no to the people I don't want to spend my time with. You know, there's all these different freedom. Yeah, time freedom. Exactly. You know, I want to be free to do what I want to do, where I want to do it. You know, purpose, you know, the freedom to choose my purpose and really define what I want to go after. So I think, you know, it's different for everybody. You know, I think we tend to think that people need coaching or want coaching because they want more financial success. And that's true. But I find that when we start to create all the other success, the financial follows really fast.
I want the cheat code. Just tell me the secret. Where's the easy button?
Yep.
But yeah, that's right. Yeah, a lot of that comes back to financial freedom.
Yep.
Because it gives you the ability to choose those other freedoms.
That's right.
But also, when it comes to, say, the time freedom, you could have, millions in the bank. Mm-hmm. And operating, you were making, I'm sure you were making great money. You were operating, 5, 6 businesses, but you were stuck operating the businesses. You didn't have time freedom because you were grinding.
That's right.
You didn't have the time to work out, to spend with your family, to maintain healthy relationships and healthy body. Did coaching help you find that balance, or at least make that plan?
Yeah, it definitely helped me make the transition into more focus on my passion and what I'm excited. Mm-hmm. It's definitely. But again, I've learned a lot of things through coaching. I learn a lot from my own students. I learn some of the challenges that I might have myself through reflection with students. So, I mean, it's kind of a great, it's a great inroad to seeing like what's working and what's not working for other people. And then obviously I get to share what works for me, which is great. But again, I'm constantly evolving. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly attending mastermind groups or education trainings or things like that, because I want to keep my edge so that I can help, fill their cup. And when we're on the coaching call. So it motivates me not only to see their success and their challenges, but also it forces me to stay on top of my game so that I can offer them, different challenges or outcomes.
What do you say the difference is between, say, mentor, teacher, and coach?
I think they're very, very similar in a lot of ways. I mean, I really do think that it depends on the prospect or the customer. Some people are motivated by investing, putting skin in the game, hiring someone to help them. They show up, they pay attention. And then there are some people that would still do the work regardless of the investment and maybe find a mentor. And, but I think ultimately everyone pays in some regard, whether it's, I'm giving equity or I'm investing time or I'm investing money. It's all for a lot of folks, it's the same outcome, and it just depends on, the road that they want to take.
Where in somebody's journey should they seek a coach?
Oh, I feel like you should immediately, think about it. Our kids, my daughters both ride horses, they have a coach. They do 2 or 3 lessons a week, and then they, train or they compete on Saturday or Sunday. Every time in my life that I feel like I'm lacking in a place, my immediate thought process now is who can help me get better at that. Just in the last year, I've had a communications coach. I have a private jujitsu coach that tries to help me get better at jujitsu. Not that it's working very well, but I have a business coach. I have a therapist that I talk to every couple of weeks just to basically download, and get stuff off my chest. So I'm always trying to find, I just hired a coach for hard money lending. It's one of the things that we're expanding in the real estate world right now. So I'm going to go hire someone that's done it before, and I'm going to learn how to do it. And I think that's, to me, that's my immediate fallback. And I do that because I know that's the best way to collapse time. I call it turning decades into days. I mean, if you do it completely on your own and you watch YouTube videos and, there's plenty of education out there, you'll get there at some point. But what you're paying for is the speed to the result, getting there faster. And so, for me, I'm always willing to pay a coach that's been there, done that, and had success at what I'm trying to do. Because I want to know what are the you mentioned earlier, what are the shortcuts, right?
Mm-hmm. It's like, one of the reasons I love reading so much is that you're getting the experts' condensed best stuff, right? So reading all the time. If I want to find out more, you'll find their podcast or their their YouTube or whatever, more material, more of their books, but they're putting their best foot forward. The best teaching material. That's why I love that consume so many books. But also with the coaching, you're hiring, you're buying their expertise, right? Their experience. Let's get back to the bottlenecks.
Yeah. So the next bottleneck we hadn't talked about yet was what I call check your toolkit, right? Or systems for support. And the analogy I use is, Aaron, when I was in the military and I had to deploy somewhere, especially in the Seabees, they expected you to land somewhere and build a thing, maybe it's a building, right? So I need to know when I land there exactly the right manpower, exactly the right materials, exactly the right tools. What am I going to need to build this building in the middle of a desert? Because there's no Home Depot, there's no Lowe's, and so you got to think in advance. What are the tools that we're using, and are we using them efficiently to get the job done? And what I find is it's funny because it kind of leads into what we were saying before. A lot of these tools that in our lives today, this technology, it creates more chaos. We feel like if we sign up for a CRM or a new, whatever kind of software tool, that it's going to make our lives easier, or we can just push a button and get a result. And then what happens? Then we start finding half of our time is sucked into trying to design the CRM or trying to make the software work the way we want it to work. And so what we don't need in our life is more chaos. What we need is more simplicity. So a lot of times when I'm looking at the tool stack or the systems that my folks are using in their life, we're eliminating things. We're looking at what's working and what's not. And we're going to focus more on what's working, put our time and attention there, and we're going to simplify. And for a lot of folks, that means going back to a good old fashioned Excel or Google spreadsheet to track things, whatever's going to make it as simple as possible for us to get the results that we want. And so I think tools, overall are very, very important, and making sure we're using the right ones, simple scales, right? Fancy fails is what we say.
Nope. No. I'm just thinking spreadsheets. That's like plain Minesweeper for me. That's my picture of hell.
Yeah.
I used before I lost my eyesight. I used to teach Excel.
Okay.
I used to teach it to the corporate world. The Citibank way of doing Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So all the keyboard shortcuts, all the formulas, all that kind of stuff is all in my head. I could do it. And now, I'm allergic.
I'll say this. And one of my old real estate mentors used to do a seminar where he would live call people. And he always said, and I'm still a believer of this, I have notepads all over. He always used to say that if you can't make $100,000 a month with a phone, a notepad, and a pen, then you don't belong in real estate investing. Keep it simple. Just make the phone calls, write down the notes, make the offers. And again, I think it gets back to, I have a lot of clients that are trying to put a couple offers a week in, and they overcomplicate it, right? They're trying to build systems. They're trying to build processes. If you're going to make 2 or 3 offers a week, you don't need anything more than a pen and a paper.
That's right. And sometimes the system isn't a new software platform.
Exactly.
Which, again, for me, the learning curve on those things. So for me, it's a relationship stack. It's a daily schedule stack. It's different systems beyond the phone and the computer.
Correct.
Even though I do have those as well. So you got the system stack, and that creates more simplicity. So that removes another one of the bottlenecks, system improvement.
That's right. And a lot of it, again, is process of elimination. It's simplicity. It's the system is what's going to create your outcomes. And so I find that people fit into kind of 2 buckets when it comes with systems. It's like the first system is like that New Year's resolution system. They build it, but then they don't sustain using it. It works well for a couple weeks and then they just give up and they don't use it at all. And then the second camp is usually people that just don't build systems. They continue to frustrate themselves. Again, like you said, it could be a scheduling system or, a contact relationship tool. Keeping it simple and using it is the two most important, facets.
Mm-hmm. Well, like me, I'm the blindest guy with shiny object syndrome. I'll hear about a really cool tool and new software, new AI, whatever it is. I'm like, all right, let's give this a try. And now I've got all these subscriptions, all these things to learn, all this stuff that doesn't really integrate with anything else. And it just creates more chaos rather than simplicity.
Yeah.
Do you have some kind of a process of elimination for these things?
For me, decision fatigue comes a lot from delegation and elimination, right? So, there are a lot of, I find two things. One, people are very challenged in the whole with delegating and delegating effectively so that they can trust the person that they're delegating to get the job done. That's number one. But I also find that people don't dump enough things. How many times do you find yourself making a decision that you didn't even need to be involved in, or isn't even necessary, or we're trying to find problems to solve that really don't need to be solved, right? So I think a lot of it is also elimination. Which of those decisions can I just dump entirely, and I don't have to put time and effort behind them.
All right. So that sounds like we're really building some momentum here. I call it the Newton's first law of kicking ass. So we're removing all these bottlenecks, all these sources of friction.
That's right.
Getting that alignment, all the way, building systems, the decision fatigue. All right. It sounds like we're getting there. What next?
Yeah. Number 4, I call controlling the clock. We talked about time freedom earlier, and time freedom to me is, a lot of people think that when they get time freedom, they're just going to, sit on the beach and drink cocktails and listen to the waves hit the shoreline, right? But you and I know better. We know that most A players, most hard chargers, most people, we're never going to retire, right? We always want to be in the game. We always want to create opportunity. We always want to, time freedom really is being and doing what you want when you want, and sometimes where you want. But that doesn't mean that we're not doing and we're not producing, right? So when we talk about controlling the clock, we talk about the rule of 168. And the rule of 168 is, we only have 168 hours in each week. No more, no less. We have the same as Elon. We have the same as Zuckerberg. We have the same as you name it. They all have the same. So what makes them different? What makes them create more? And the fact is, it's about how we control that clock. A lot of people think that they're out of time, or I don't have enough time. And you're not out of time. You're out of clarity. You're out of boundaries. And really, a lot of times we get out of rhythm. And so it's not about getting more done. It's about doing the right things. And so when we turn it to time management, I think about high income activities and high outcome activities. What are the things that are going to make me the most money for the least amount of time? But what are also the things that are going to have the highest impact? For example, I don't get paid to go watch my daughters train horses, right? But it's every bit as impactful and as important to me as being on this podcast or dealing with a coaching client or putting together a big deal. So I want to make sure I'm spending as many hours in my 168, creating income and creating impact.
I'll listen to my son play the guitar for free. But he has to pay me to let him play the guitar, play the drums. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's opportunity cost sometimes, but it's what is our time worth to us? What do we value the most? Is it the dollars, or is it the experiences?
Yeah.
And where do we find that balance? So you're absolutely right. Once you get the alignment, you remove as much friction as you possibly can, then you get that freedom to choose. when it comes to your coaching clients, what part, which of these bottlenecks do you think is most difficult for people to overcome?
Yeah, I think it always starts with limiting beliefs, and limiting beliefs tend to creep in because, let's say you do get your mindset right, and then you create your strategy and you start getting the right tools in place and you start controlling the clock properly, effectively, and you use step 5, which we're going to talk about in a minute. When you start to put all these things together, what happens? You start to level up. And what happens when you level up? It brings you right back to, possibly that imposter syndrome you were talking about earlier, or just a different level of limiting belief. I got to this level, but I'm not sure if I can get to that level, or, a myriad of the different voices in your head start to kick in. So I think that it's a constant evolution. We want to keep it simple, but I always want to look at, okay, which one of these 5 things is keeping me stuck? Mm-hmm. So I'll reflect back on these with my clients and say, okay, where do you think you're not getting the best value? Do you think your strategy needs to be adjusted? Do you think that time management needs to be adjusted? Do you think that you're just overthinking it, or you're letting ego get in the way and it's stopping your mindset from being in alignment with your outcome? And so it's a constant evolution of kind of micro decisions to get 1% better every day.
That's like, it reminds me of the excuses versus reasons. Mm-hmm. And I can feel my son rolling his eyes when I ask him that question. Is that an excuse or a reason?
Yeah.
I give him a hard time, but he's an awesome kid. And sometimes, right, we all say, I couldn't do that because you grounded me from my phone.
Yeah.
You couldn't think ahead to like ask him when you were in person. Anyways, yeah, you said, for all those, limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome being one of them, that saying, if you fight for excuses hard enough, you get to keep them. And I know a lot of times I tend to realize my mistake, my excuse, and sometimes slip right back into it. I work on getting out of that, not believing that, and then fall back into that same paradigm. But it's I guess it's a constant practice.
Agreed.
Shedding that thermostat, changing the temperature on your excuses, your reasons, and allowing yourself to grow and become who you're supposed to be.
Couldn't have said it better.
Before we jump into the final segment, is there anything else that we haven't covered as far as the bottlenecks, as far as what you teach, or what? Tell me about the book. When's that come out?
Yeah, so the book is actually Multiplicity, and it covers these 5 roads, what I call the 5 roads to victory, or the 5 bottlenecks. You can find that on Amazon, and I'll send you guys a link as well. It's actually out right now. So, we talk a lot about this. I talk a lot about the 5 freedoms, and really how to accomplish those things and eliminate these bottlenecks from your day to day.
Excellent. Well, Joe, this has been fantastic. I think it's perfect time to move into the countdown to impact. Yeah. And you've done this before. It's 3, 2, 1, 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person who have all made an impact in your life.
All right. Let's think about this. So most recently, 3 books that I can think of off the top of my head. I was thinking about this earlier. I love the new book by Ben Hardy. It's called The Science of Scaling Up. Very, very impactful. It's kind of a play off of his 10X is easier than 2X, but it gets into a lot more detail. And so I'm really enjoying that right now. I'm also, I just reread The Tribe of Millionaires. So I belong to a nationwide mastermind called GoBundance. An amazing group of guys that are just go-givers. And, that they focus a lot on family. In fact, I'm flying out next week to Breckenridge with my family to hang out with those guys and, basically set our family values and our family goals out, which is awesome. And so Tribe of Millionaires kind of lays out what the GoBundance thing is all about. And I'd say the last one, I really started getting back into reading the Bible this year. I've been a Catholic my whole life, but, I've never really spent time, studying and reading. And so that's kind of been on my nightstand, and it's been in my hands multiple times a day for the last couple months. So, just diving deeper into that.
I can't tell you how many people I've had on this show that are a member of that group. And I think I'm beginning to think Austin is the center of the universe. All right. Those are great book recommendations. I actually really enjoyed Tribe of Millionaires. And okay, so 2 quotes or rules of thumb.
Yeah, so I always love Henry Ford's quote: "What you believe and or what you can conceive and believe you can achieve." It gets back into that limiting belief piece. The most important part of that quote is belief, right? Because lots of people conceive ideas. We all have ideas in the shower, but how many of them actually get implemented? It stops at the belief phase, right? We have a great idea, and then we don't really believe we can do it. So I try to encourage people just to start to believe more, because you probably have a lot of great ideas and they don't get achieved because you're not believing. So that's a big piece. And 2 quotes. What's my other one? Let's see. There's lots of good quotes out there. I'm trying to think. I would stick with that one. I think that's a big one, and I think it goes a long way. There's a really great Tony Robbins quote that's very, very similar to that, but it's the same concept. People have a hard time overcoming their limiting beliefs. Tony says the strongest force in the human personality is change, right? Is not changing, is being how we define ourselves and sticking that way. So, when we can overcome how we define ourselves, we start to unlock new doors.
I love it. He does have a lot of great quotes. And one person who's made an impact in your life.
Oh, man, more recently than not, my coach, Trevor McGregor. I've been with him 5 years now, and it just feels like we keep getting better and better every year. So I'd have to give a shout out to Trevor. Trevor's been my coach for a while. He's a ex-Tony Robbins Platinum coach, just a really, really good guy. And I'm glad to have him in my corner.
That's terrific. Well, last 2 questions then, Joe. One is, if people want to find out more, connect with you, where do they go?
Yeah, they can check out legacybuilder.coach, especially if they're interested in real estate, if they're looking to find someone that can make great connections and help them get a project across the line, or even if they want some help just underwriting a deal and trying to figure out if it's a good project. They can feel free to reach out to me there and send me a message.
Excellent. And we'll have that in the show notes. And final question. What's your definition of living a life of impact?
Yeah, for me, it's community. It's what am I doing for my community? Who am I adding to my community? How am I helping that community grow? And really, it's my coach calls it ROI. It's not return on investment. It's ripple of impact. Right. So, just us doing this type of thing, somebody listening and making a change, or, getting over a limiting belief or creating a new strategy, that little ripple goes a long, long way. So I believe in that. And I think we're doing it right now. Excellent.
Well, Joe, I really appreciate you sharing your time, your expertise, and coming back to the show and speaking with the Disruptor Nation. Thank you.
Love it, brother. Thanks for having me on.